activity, I am going to show you how to do the first step in close reading, as well as the second step in close reading and annotating the text. If you have not got your treasures book yet, pause this video now. Please go get your treasures book. You should be on page 60 and 61 in your treasures book. The title of the story is called Emperor in the Andes. This is a non-fiction story that presents facts and ideas about a non-fiction topic. Step 1 in close reading is to read the story to get the gist or understanding of what it's about. Please follow along while I read aloud Emperor in the Andes. Once a great empire grew in the Andes Mountains of South America. This civilization took its name from its ruler, the Inca. The empire stretched from what is today Ecuador to central Chile. Like the Aztec, the Inca worshipped the sun and depended on maize and organized a strong army. From village to empire. The Inca Empire began around 1200 in Cusco, a small village in a fertile mountain valley in what is today Peru. A drought reduced their farmland, so the Inca took over their neighbors' land. During the 1300s, the Inca ruled most of the valley. In 1438, a ruler called Pachacuti Inca extended the Inca borders west to the Pacific Ocean and south to Lake Titicaca, high in the central Andes. Sweat of the sun. The Inca worked rich gold mines. They called the metal sweat of the sun and used it to decorate temples to their sun god. The sun god's temple in Cusco had a huge sculpture of him decorated with precious stones. There was even a golden garden with flowers and birds made of gold. The Inca capital. Cusco served as the center of government, religion, and trade. The temples and government buildings at the center of Cusco were constructed of stone blocks. These blocks still fit together so well that it is impossible to put a knife between them. They can also withstand earthquakes. Beyond the main plaza were the palaces of the emperor and wealthy nobles. The nobles wore special headbands and earrings. One of the Spanish soldiers who visited the city was impressed by Inca wealth and skill. He wrote the following description in the 1500s. The interior of the Temple of the Sun was a mine of gold. On the western wall was the Son of God, engraved on a massive plate of gold of enormous size, thickly powdered with emeralds and special stones. The morning sun fell directly upon it at its rising, lighting up the whole apartment. Now that we've finished the first read and have a basic understanding of what's going on, it's time to do our second read and dig a little bit deeper. During our second read, we're going to annotate the text. The first step in text annotation is chunking the text, so we're not trying to look at all sections at once. In a nonfiction text, there are some features that should allow you to be able to chunk this text very easily. Those features are known as headings and subheadings, which we should be familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and chunk this text right now. I'm going to start with the introduction. Now remember, we're going to use brackets to chunk the text. I'm going to label this my first section. On the second page of the story, you can see 1, 2, 3 subheadings. That's going to signal to us 1, 2, 3 chunks of our text. So I'm going to use brackets to mark off our second chunk. Our third chunk. And lastly, and don't forget the Spanish soldier's comment, our fourth chunk. Now we can do our next step of text annotation, which would be targeting. And now it may be easier for most of you to go through and target first, then go through and underline important details second. I find that easier as well. And remember, you're approaching chunk by chunk. So let's go ahead and look at chunk number 1. I'm going to go ahead and circle some words that I think might be tricky for most sixth graders. This chunk actually had quite a few. Civilization, Empire might be a tricky word or unfamiliar. And lastly would be maze. Now I'm going to move forward to my second chunk. And I'm looking through here to see if there are any words that might be unfamiliar or unknown to me. I think those are okay. Now I'm going to look through my third chunk. And lastly, I'm going to look through my fourth chunk. I think nobles might be a tricky or unknown word, so I'm going to circle nobles. Okay. The next step to targeting, after we have found our words, is we need to go ahead and define those words. So very briefly, I'm going to go ahead and define civilization. That is a human development. Empire. An empire is a group of states or countries. Maize is corn. Okay. On the back side, if we look at our chunks on the back, all we had was nobles, which is a person of high rank. Okay. The second step to targeting is pulling out key details. So I'm going to underline some specific details in the story that I think are really important. First, starting with the intro. Obviously, we have a great empire that grew. The name of this empire was the Inca. We got the name from its rulers, so I think that's really important to know. On the second page, we have some important key details that we learn about this new empire. It began around 1200 in Cusco. That's important to know. It's important to know that a ruler extended this Inca border. The Inca worked with rich gold mines. That's important information. Cusco served as the center of the government. And soldiers who visited were impressed by the wealth and the skill. So as you can see, I just did a quick skim and scan and just underline those important key details that really stood out to me as good learning points in this story. The last part of our annotation of the text is writing in the margins. So writing in the margins is just really all about what's going on in your head while you're reading. There's nothing that you are going to place that's right or wrong. It's just all your own thoughts, opinions, and feelings. And you will notice that writing in the margins aligns really well with our lit circle jobs. So I'm just going to go through and make some marks in my margins that I was thinking in my mind when I was reading this story. So I'm wondering, Ecuador to central Chile today. I'm wondering how many miles that is. How big is this? What does this really look like? It's a question I have. I want to put a picture to this comment in the story. So that's a visualization. On the back side, when I was reading this, I was thinking, I'm wondering where Peru is on the map. That's a question I have. Where is Peru? So again, that kind of putting a picture to my mind of visualization using a map. This part right here, a drought reduced their farmland. So I'm going to clarify. This means it went down. Sometimes we skip over little details like that. We don't want to get confused with this going up and making it better. This actually meant that it made it worse and went down. So I just want to do a little clarification for myself right there. This entire section down here is a great visualization. I'm thinking in my mind gold. Everything colored in gold, sculptures in gold, Just the color gold just shines right in my mind. So this is a perfect visualization example. Same thing right here. I can actually see in my mind someone trying to stick a knife between those blocks to see if they can get this to work. I can actually picture that in my head. I actually think it's kind of a funny visualization. And lastly, right here, the Spanish soldiers who visited the city. Now, when I first read this, I was thinking, why was he impressed? And then later on in the story, we learn that the answer comes down below. So my first read just really got me this thinking, why was he impressed? What was so great about the wealth and skill? And then just a few sentences later, I get the answer to that question. So that was one of my thoughts that was going on in my head. And also, to end this, I can definitely visualize, I can see the light shining onto the jewels. Always reminds me of when people want to cover their eyes when something is really shiny and it's hard for them to see. So these were just some of my thoughts that was going on to my head. As you can see, after my annotations are finished, my text is marked up completely. I've got words circled that I targeted to define. I targeted key details, and then I wrote in the margins showing what I was thinking while I was reading. All good pieces to comprehension. The last thing you need to do is you need to summarize the text, because if you can't summarize the text, you don't really have the comprehension of the text that you should. Here would be my summary once I've finished annotations. The Inca Empire began around 1200 as a small village in a fertile valley. It expanded in 1438. The capital served as a center of government, religion, and trade. Soldiers were impressed by Inca wealth and skill. As you can see, and you should have heard, a lot of my details from my summary came from things that I had underlined and things that I had located through my annotations of the text. As we move forward, you are going to be practicing some examples. Please refer to this video as many times as you need to help you when you're trying to annotate a text.